Chapter 2 Hard Times 1907 to 1919. 1907 Ford's Model T car rolls off the assembly line. 1912 Titanic, the unsinkable ship, sinks. 1914 First traffic lights installed with only red and green lights. When she was around 10 years old, Amelia had to leave her grandparents, her cousins, and Kansas behind. Her father had found a new job with another railroad company. The Earhart family boarded a train and headed for Des Moines, Iowa. Later, Amelia and her family moved many more times. The Earharts moved a lot because Mr. Earhart began drinking and losing jobs. When Amelia was 18, the family moved to Chicago, and this time they went without Mr. Earhart. There, Amelia's school had girls' sports teams, but she never joined because she had to help out at home. But Amelia always put on a cheerful face. Even her best friends never knew about her father's drinking or her family's poverty. After graduating from high school in 1916, Amelia went off by herself to a school in Philadelphia. There she began a scrapbook which she labeled Women's Achievement. Inside, Amelia pasted newspaper articles. Each one reported on women who had achieved firsts. There were articles about the first women to hold certain positions, such as the president of a bank, the police commissioner, and a city manager. Amelia was becoming more aware of how women could make important contributions to the world. Two events happened in Amelia's life that allowed her to finally achieve firsts of her own. The first event was in 1903 when Amelia was only 6. That's when the Wright brothers built an airplane. Their first flight lasted 12 seconds, quite an achievement then. The second event was World War I. It started in Europe in 1914. Airplanes had improved by that time and were used in this war. Men were trained to pilot these planes. By 1917, the United States entered the war. Wounded pilots and soldiers came home to recover. That Christmas, Amelia visited Muriel, who was at school in Toronto, Canada. Amelia decided to leave school and stay in Toronto to help the many wounded soldiers there. Amelia became a nurse's aide. Some of the men she cared for were pilots. One day, Amelia and her girlfriend went to an airfield to see these pilots fly. One pilot did the usual loops, rolls, and spins that pilots did in those days. But then he aimed his plane low. He buzzed the two young women as they stood watching. Amelia's friend ran for cover. Not Amelia. She said of that day, "I remember the mingled fear and pleasure. I did not understand it at the time, but I believe that little red airplane said something to me as it swished by. Amelia would have to wait several years to find out just what the plane was saying." Chapter 3 In the Air 1920 to 1928. 1920 Women in the U.S. win the right to vote. 1920 Bessie Coleman is first African American and first American woman to get pilot's license. 1926 Gertrude Adderley is first woman to swim across the English Channel. By the summer of 1920, Amelia went to live with her parents, who were now back together and living in California. California had a popular weekend activity: air shows. Amelia and her father often watched the former World War I pilots take those planes up into the sky and do their rolls, loops, and spins. One day, Amelia's father bought her a ticket for a ride. 23-year-old Amelia had her first plane trip, a 10-minute ride over Los Angeles. Amelia couldn't hold back her excitement. She knew she had to fly. Amelia wanted to take lessons from a woman pilot. Her teacher, Anita Schnook, taught Amelia about engine repair as well as flying. After many lessons, Amelia finally flew by herself. She was a pilot. Now Amelia wanted to fly all the time, but this sport cost money. Amelia took a wide variety of jobs: a file clerk, photographer, and truck driver, just to pay for flying time. For her birthday present, the Earharts helped Amelia buy her first plane. It was yellow. Amelia named it Canary. Canary. It's the name of a bird. Burung Canary. In 1924, Amelia's parents were finally divorcing. Her mother decided to move to Medford, Massachusetts, where Muriel now lived. As usual, money was tight. Amelia sold her plane to buy a car. She needed one to drive herself and her mother across the country. Amelia bought a sports car and named it the Yellow Peril. In Medford, Massachusetts, Amelia got a job at Denison House, a social center in Boston. She taught English to immigrant children who loved piling into the Yellow Peril for a ride around the block. Soon Amelia became a social worker at Denison House. For the first time, 27-year-old Amelia found work that she loved. Immigrant children. So means that children from other countries, children with different cultures, orang dengan budaya yang berbeda-beda, ya. Bagaimana ya rasanya? Mungkin kalau di Indonesia biasa saja karena kita setiap hari bertemu dengan orang yang kulturnya berbeda, misalnya orang Madura, orang Jawa, orang Batak, orang Kalimantan, orang Papua, orang Ambon, orang Cina, orang Arab, bahkan orang luar negeri, ya. But on the weekends, Amelia rented planes and was in the air. And airplanes and pilots were in the news more and more. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh was the first person to successfully fly across the Atlantic. Many other pilots wanted the same kind of attention. They wanted to perform a flying first. Lindbergh lands in Paris. Great ovation greets air hero. One such person was Mrs. Frederick Guest, a rich adventurer. She decided to sponsor a plane trip, one that would carry the first female passenger across the Atlantic. She asked a friend, George Putnam, to find an American woman pilot to be that passenger. Chapter 4. Amelia's First, 1928 to 1932. 1926. First commercial airmail flight. 1928. First Mickey Mouse cartoon appears. 1932. Spelling of Puerto Rico changed to Puerto Rico. When Putnam and Amelia met, he knew that she was the perfect choice. Amelia was bright and had a style of her own. Her hair was short, she wore pants, a brown leather jacket, and tied a silken scarf around her neck. Putnam would have an easy time getting the press to write about this beautiful lady pilot. Wilmer Stultz and Louis Garden were chosen to fly the plane. Amelia was to make the flying decisions. Mrs. Guest's plane was named Friendship. It had pontoons so it could land on water. The Friendship took off from East Boston Harbor on Sunday, June the 3rd, 1928. The crew stopped often to refuel. In Newfoundland, they were grounded by bad weather and heavy fog. Finally, 14 days after starting out, the weather was good, but bad out at sea. Stoltz, Gordon, and Earhart decided to take off anyway. The wide Atlantic stretched before them. Soon after takeoff, the storm closed in. The captain couldn't fly above the high storm clouds. Snow fell below them. Fog surrounded them. It was a grueling journey. After more than 20 hours in the air, they spotted the coast below. The Friendship landed in Buryport, Wales. They had made it, and Amelia had become her very own first, the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. Crowds in Europe cheered them. They sailed back to New York and got a ticket tape parade. Amelia wrote articles and books about her adventure. Amelia wanted to go back to social work, but flying and giving speeches about her experiences took up too much of her time. Amelia also wanted to do exactly what Lindbergh had done, fly solo across the Atlantic. She studied maps and charts to prepare for the trip. Amelia left Newfoundland on May the 20th, 1932. 4 hours from land, Amelia was in real trouble. It was dark. She was flying in a storm, and her equipment was failing. She couldn't tell how high she was flying. The reserve gas tank leaked, and gas dripped down her neck. The electrical storm tossed her plane. Amelia tried to climb above the storm, but ice formed on her wings. For a time, her plane spun out of control. She tried lowering her plane. The ice on the wings melted. Yes. But now she was about to hit the sea's swelling waves. No. Throughout the flight, Amelia battled the storm. Finally, Amelia saw land, but she didn't know how much fuel she had left. She picked the nearest spot that gave her the safest landing. It was a cow pasture. After she landed, Amelia asked the man standing there, "Where am I?" He told her she was near Londonderry Island. He couldn't believe she'd come all the way from America. Amelia phoned Putnam, whom she had married in 1931. Within hours, the world got the news. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Amelia had achieved the first she had longed for.